second annual Worst in Show Awards. We'll kick it over to our host for the day, Cory Doctorow.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being here today. I have my run of show notes in front of me, and it says that our first order of business is to welcome you and give you an overview of the event. So every year, a group of us, well, for the second year in a row anyway, a group of us are gathering to look over the gadgets that are on display at CES and tell you about which ones caught our interest as exemplifying that old maxim that cyberpunk was not a suggestion, it was a warning. I've been going to CES for decades, and I have seen lots of glitzy presentations, and the one thing that you will always reliably get when you go to see a presentation or a demo or pick up a brochure or fondle a gadget while someone tries to sell it to you is an exhaustive enumeration of all of the benefits and speculative benefits of how that gadget will work. But what none of those people will ever do is tell you how it will fail. And that's kind of our job here today, is to talk about the hidden or maybe not so hidden and completely foreseeable failure modes of these gadgets, and what they say about the state of the industry today from the perspective of repair and consumer rights and sustainability and privacy and all of those other good things that we would hope that we would get along with our technological revolution, in which we are quite committed to making sure we all have. So our first speaker of the day is Gay Gordon Byrne from the Repair Foundation. She is their executive director, and she's going to tell us a little about repair.org.
Thank you so much, Cory. This is a great event. I'm really excited to be able to participate this time. The Repair Association is really formally the Digital Right to Repair Coalition. And we have set out ourselves a mission to advocate for repair-friendly legislation, regulations, standards, not just for any particular product, but for all products. And we've managed to go from 3 original associations to over 400 within our network. So we've really, including EFF and US PIRG, and iFixit, and many, many other wonderful groups. So we're delighted to be able to participate. Our mission is repair and making sure that we all have the option to fix our stuff. Most of our members are in some form of R. We are repair people, reuse people, recycling people, remanufacturing people. And the central problem is that we can't fix our stuff. So it's fun to look at things that are being presented at CES and try to imagine how they could possibly be fixed. So that's my introduction, and I want to kick it over to, let's see. My arms aren't long enough to read the notes. Where are we going now? We are going to Kyle. Kyle from my Facebook.
I think I'm introducing Kyle, or maybe you're introducing Kyle. In any event, let's both introduce our good friend Kyle Wiens from iFixit, the great heroes of the repair revolution, the people who will provide you with open manuals for fixing any gadget you have, and who will go to the U.S. Copyright Office and to court and wherever else it takes to safeguard your right to repair. Kyle, naturally enough, is going to be telling us about the repairability category.
Well, CES is full of amazing gizmos. My favorite thing when I wander the show floor at CES is to walk up to, some poor marketing person at a booth and say, "Hey, that's a cool thing. Can I take it apart?" And they never have a good reaction to that. We're just wandering around with screwdrivers and help us fix our things. So today's winner in the trying to do their absolute dangdest to stymie self-repair in all forms is a device that actually has software warnings telling you not to open it up, and goes out of their way to label the way that you get into it with a big red warning and a big red lever. So if we can cue up the slides, I'll show you the winner of this year's Worst Repairability Award is Mercedes EQS EV. Now, Mercedes announced their concept vehicle, but we actually have a EQS that has shipped. They just started shipping, in the last few months. And so we've seen these things out in the wild. And this is the warning that it says in the software. You cannot open the hood of the car. It is locked, warning of accident, warning of injury if you open the hood. Mercedes' perspective is, hey, this is an electric car. There's nothing the owner needs to do under the hood of this car. Despite this being an incredibly complex, sophisticated amalgamation of all kinds of different technologies, lots of mechanical moving components, wear items, things that are going to go wrong. There's an air filter under the hood, but you shouldn't open the hood and replace the air filter. Now, fortunately, these are just software warnings, and there is still a hood lever. They just don't really tell you where it is. But then if you do find the hood lever, there's no strut, the rod that holds the hood open when you open it. This car doesn't have that. You have to buy that as a separate tool or bring your own stick to be able to work on the car. So this is not the first time Mercedes has pulled something like this. A few years ago, they notoriously removed the dipstick from the C-Class vehicles. And they're like, you should never be changing the oil. Just take it to an authorized technician to do that work. So this is everything that is wrong with the future. This is the world that we do not want. Yes, electric vehicles require less maintenance, and that's awesome. But we're still going to need to be doing work on them, and defaulting to locking owners out of the new electric world is not the right place to start. So for that, Mercedes gets worst in chauffeur repairability.
Thank you very much, Kyle. That was great. I love the idea of a car that it's deliberately engineered to smash you in the back of the skull when it goes wrong, just to improve your mood. Our next speaker is going to be Cindy Cohen, my dear old friend and notionally, I guess, my boss at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Just about to have my 20th EFF anniversary there, so that's how long we've been associated with each other. Naturally enough, Cindy is going to be talking about privacy, an issue that is near and dear to our heart at EFF.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cory. Notionally is the right word for that in terms of me being your boss. But it is, I also love walking around CES and asking unfortunate questions of the poor salespeople, including, what happens if a stalker gets a hold of this? And I think that is a really important question for all of the ones that we looked at. And it was honestly a really hard thing to choose which of the many devices that could be used by people against you could be the one that was the worst in show. And I ended up in a very difficult place between what about surveilling your whole house and all the people who are there versus what about surveilling your whole car and all the people who are there. And ultimately, I picked the house. Just because it's bigger and we tend to spend more time there. But honestly, anything that intends to surveil an entire bunch of a place, including the people who aren't the targets of you trying to figure out what you're doing, you should be really beware of. And, already with Apple's AirTags, we're starting to see some terrible stories about people using little devices that you can, basically little bugs that people can stick in your stuff to try to track you. And of course, trying to steal your car is one of the stories out of Florida right now. But the worst ones are the ones involving domestic violence and stalkers and other things like that. And so I think you should always be nervous about something that is a surveillance device. And so to me, the winner though, and believe me, this was a race to the bottom, was the Singlet Smart Health Monitoring Bulb. This is a light bulb that is supposed to be monitoring your health, but really is monitoring the humans in the room. And in fact, if you set up multiple ones, you can set up a grid to track all the people in the room. The idea is this is going to track your sleep and your heart rate and your body temperature. And again, it could create a mesh. And I think this is all, the best. These are one of these things where you think some people are like, we can do this thing. Now let's find a need for it. And I guess the need for it was in case grandma falls down. You can find that out. Of course, grandma has all sorts of other ways to tell you that she's fallen down that are really only about surveilling her and that she can control, as opposed to this one, which is outside of grandma's control. And also, you really don't need your heart rate and body temperatures of all the people who are visiting you. If we get back to a day where people can actually visit you in your home, of course, there's nothing about these that says that they're only going to be used inside homes as well. So we're thinking about offices and than other kinds of place. So the idea that you need your light bulb to monitor your heart rate is something that we should just all reject. It's creepy, it's weird, it's not necessary. And, the other thing we always know about these things is, what happens to that data? Where does it go? Who else has access to it? What are the other things that could be used for it? And if you're not thinking about what could a stalker do with this, and if you're not thinking about what, privacy geeks called secondary uses, but what the rest of us call who else has access to that data once I give it to this Singlet company, then you're not being responsible. And I think that that this light bulb wins as worsted chauffeur beat.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, illustrating again that other important aphorism that what technology does is not nearly so important as who it does it for and who it does it to. Our next presenter is Nathan Proctor from US PIRG. PIRG, of course, one of the grandparents of the consumer rights movement, who've been critical in all kinds of fights about product safety and a fair deal for those of us on the buy side of those product decisions. Nathan is going to present to us on the environmental impact category, which in this era of e-waste was another hotly contested category, although, as we'll hear, there was a dark horse that came up on the inside to take top honors this year.
Yes, thank you, Cory. Yes, Nathan Proctor with the US PIRG. We are a national nonprofit with state affiliates around the country that advocate for the public interest, including for democracy and our health and environment. I think the kind of source of my dark horse comes from this idea that if you look at society, we've kind of crossed this threshold, right? Where having more things used to solve problems, right? More stuff, more economic growth and more jobs, et cetera. But now kind of overconsumption is at the cause of a lot of the things that are going wrong with the world, from the plastic in the ocean to the climate crisis. And the most important thing is figuring out how we can have better without more, how we can use the abundance that we can create without destroying the planet in the process. And Right to Repair is very much in line with that mission. And one of the beautiful things about the digital age is that the marginal cost of kind of sharing and making copies of things is pretty close to zero, right? But there are just some people who have a hard time rolling with that kind of sharing. So we are so used to value that's derived from scarcity that we have to inject scarcity into the digital world, where it's totally unnecessary and serves no purpose other than to create uniqueness for things that are actually truly not unique. And so this brings me to my selection for the worst in class for the environment: Samsung's new TV NFT aggregation platform, a way to buy, sell, and display your NFT artwork from your huge, ginormous OLED Samsung TV. So if you don't know what an NFT is, I am honestly jealous of your life. But let me explain poorly, and because there's no way to actually explain it without boring you to death. But it stands for non-fungible token, and it's a piece of digital media with some kind of permanent, non-transferable marker attached to it, which kind of confirms it's been attributed to you in some way. It's basically a way to create scarcity for digital images that would otherwise not have that as part of their existence. So they're sold on markets like collectibles, sort of like a Beanie Baby craze for crypto tech bros. If Beanie Babies required massive continual energy consumption on a warming planet to remain corporeal, right? So they are using, they're bought and sold using Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency, also a massive energy consumer. One researcher calculated that a certain artist selling two pieces of artwork used 175 milliwatt hours of electricity, creating the greenhouse gas emissions equivalent of 21 years of an average US household's electricity use. So, weird fads, especially on the internet, they come and go. Some observers see Samsung's move to embrace NFTs as proof that this terrible idea is going to be sticking around. One, Matt Willey wrote, "We're talking about a dedicated platform that will be baked into new Samsung TVs. This is about as mainstream as it gets." So if you're the kind of person who likes to show off how much money you can destroy how much money you can waste to destroy the planet in the process of demonstrating that you own something that doesn't actually exist. Maybe this seems like a good idea to those of us who don't feel that way and don't think that technologists should be sitting around figuring out ways to hasten Armageddon. This new Samsung TV NFT aggregation platform is the worst in show for the environment.
Thank you very much, Nathan. So our next presenter is Paul Roberts from Secure Repairs, an organization dedicated to showing how security and repair go together. A common source of FUD from the anti-repair world is the idea that if we allow you to fix your own stuff, that you might introduce security defects into it that could threaten you and your family and the people you connect to, which is actually true. It's also true that if you can't repair your stuff, you might also be unable to fix the security defects that are in your devices and that can threaten you and your loved ones and the people you connect to. And the idea that large companies that don't have to worry about competition from other repair sources are going to be the best suited to making sure that our gadgets are safe is not only incoherent, it's also just empirically false, as the parade of stories in which people's connected everything, toasters and coffee makers and cars and sex toys, are hijacked to attack them and the people around them. So take it away, Paul, with our worst security in show.
Thanks, Cory. Yes, Secure Repairs. I would also say to the folks listening, if you're an information security or information technology professional and you support Right to Repair, check out our website, securerepairs.org, and join us. There's a lot of work. There's a big fight ahead to win the right to repair, and we need IT and InfoSec professionals to be on the right side of that. So I am really happy to be back for the second year, and assessing the security of a device at CES is, of course, inherently complicated because I can't lay my hands on it, nor is anyone else allowed to lay their hands on this stuff and actually do a security assessment, some kind of red team or penetration testing of these devices. And so we're sort of inferring security issues, or we're talking about often larger security issues around these products or product categories. So I'm kind of going to asterisk what I'm saying with that. I haven't laid hands on CES stuff because I'm not at CES, but there is still very much a strong security story to be had at this year's show, as there is in every year's show. And in fact, CES is an orgy of stuff, but cybersecurity consistently is kind of the mad woman in the attic at CES. It's a thing that everybody knows is there, and nobody really wants to talk about. So there you go. So for this year's CES 2022, I am choosing one of the big announcements of this show, which is John Deere's fully autonomous 8R tractor as my choice for the security winner or loser, depending on how you look at it, of CES 2022. And my reasons for doing this are actually pretty well established. John Deere is obviously a leading maker of agricultural equipment. They make multi-ton robotic internet-connected equipment that is used on farms across the world and certainly in the United States. One of the things that concerns me about this fully autonomous tractor, as with any autonomous device that's internet connected and software driven, is that you create the potential for software attacks becoming cyber physical, right? A software-based compromise that gives a remote actor control of the device, of the mechanical device, could then be used to physically hurt people, farm workers who are working in proximity to this device. From a kind of critical infrastructure national security perspective, a fully autonomous, software-controlled, remotely controllable tractor could be simply bricked, rendered useless. Attacks carried out at the right time could really basically halt food production in the United States, lead to food shortages. So this is a really serious issue. Now, any company that makes any software, let alone, again, multi-ton robotic equipment with, that constitutes millions of lines of code, is going to encounter security problems, right? Security is just a cybersecurity issues, vulnerabilities are just a byproduct of how much code you write. So Deere, like every other device maker, is going to encounter security issues, vulnerabilities, some of them very serious. Some of them might not even be Deere's fault, like Log4j, which was the recent ubiquitous open source library that is in pretty much everything, and it has a really serious remotely exploitable vulnerability, including, by the way, in Deere's products, as Deere has indicated. They're vulnerable to Log4j as well. So sometimes it's not even your code, but you still need to deal with it. And that comes down to kind of what your security culture is as a company. And that's really, I think, why Deere ends up as the security loser at this year's show. Because what we've seen in the last year is a really announcement of a really serious vulnerability in a Deere application discovered by a security researcher by the name, he uses the handle sick codes. And in April, he discovered that he was able to compromise johndeere.com or myjohndeere.com, the website, as well as the Deere Operations Center website. This is the operations center that basically controls all of the Deere equipment that's out there in the field. And that he was able to get sensitive information from that, vehicle identification numbers and other important information on actual vehicles deployed in the fields. Deere's response to this has been lacking. It really boils down to what I would consider security washing. They launched a bug bounty program with HackerOne. They sent their CISO out on a press tour and talked about how seriously they take security. But in reality, there's very little to show for that. That bug bounty program exempted hardware from the types of things that researchers were invited to scrutinize. They've had 100 reports since it launched, but only 40 are resolved. So they've got 60 unresolved issues sitting in the queue. I would argue that Deere, if they want to do the right thing on security, should follow the model of a company like Tesla, actually go to a show like DEF CON, invite security researchers to get their hands on their equipment and really allow a full auditing of the security of their products. And that would give us more peace of mind that when they say their stuff is secure, they really mean it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm reminded of Theodore Sturgeon's classic story, Killdozer, and what would happen if we could get one of those giant threshing machines to go fully autonomous and off the rails there. So our final presentation before we get to the overall Worston show is from Gay, who's going to tell us about the wisdom of crowds, the product you all chose as the Worston show in our ongoing web poll. Gay, take it away.
I didn't really know until about an hour ago that was very, very tightly contested between several of the products we've already talked about for all of the same good reasons that we've already talked about them. The candidates were obviously the John Deere tractor, the light bulb, the L'Oreal hair dye applicator that's the size of a rolling pin. And I'm frankly not sure what that fourth guy is. Anyone want to tell me what that is? Who that was? Which
was
product?
that car surveillance? So it surveils people in your car and sees if they're paying attention enough.
Well,
Yeah, that's a guy falling asleep at the wheel, I think.
I wasn't
Having his
sure.
irises scanned.
Yeah, and he's got some blue stuff hanging off of his mustache too, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, these were all very hard-fought categories, and I'm not at all surprised to see that John Deere was the winner of this worst in show category, at least from the standpoint of the people that voted on the poll. And for the same reason that Paul has already pointed out, it's because how do you keep this thing going when it's got to be connected to the internet at all times? And there's so many holes in that whole arrangement that it's going to be a total mess if there's anything wrong with that connection. There's so many things wrong with this product, and it's not the autonomy, it's how it's executed. I mean, we've all had RC cars in the past. It's not that difficult to program something to operate autonomously, but when you've created this product that has to have high availability and it has to be easily repairable, and then you make it impossible to repair, you're really getting into an area where this may not deliver what it needs to deliver for the food industry. Not to mention the cyber threats, and not to mention the unbelievable expense of keeping this thing running. And I understand the attention that farmers have, that they'd like to reduce their labor costs, But I don't think this product is going to deliver on that. They have terrible security. We've already talked about. We are fighting them in every state, in every legislature, to just cause them to sell what they've already said they will sell. They told us 3 years ago they were going to be repair friendly in January of 2021, and they did nothing. And they now claim that, oh, farmers can fix 98% of their stuff. The problem being 2% takes the whole machine down 100%. So if you can't replace a digital part, and it's a small, possibly an inexpensive part, you don't have a functional machine. And this just speaks to the fact that this particular product isn't going to deliver on the function that the farmers need. So I hope that makes some sense for the people that are listening in. That would be kind of my view of it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Last year, the John Deere took top honors in our Worston show. It's good to see them back again with another strong showing in the dystopia watch category here. And it's nice to see that the broad public is getting the message that allowing one giant union busting, profit taking, rapacious ag tech company to corner the market on how we get our food, and then just turning them loose to do whatever they want with the machines that are necessary is probably not the path we need to a better future. So finally, we come to my pick for the Worston show. And this year we have a different kind of, again, a dark horse, one that I wouldn't have thought I'd have chosen, but after I read about this, it just sat with me. Do we have a slide for it? Can we bring it up? There we are. This is Lenovo's Smart Clock Essential with Alexa. So this is an alarm clock that has Amazon surveillance speaker technology built into it that you put next to your bed or your kid's bed. And, for those of you who haven't really considered how the surveillance speakers work, they all have these wake words where you say something like, hey, Alexa, or hey, Siri, or hey, Google. And the speaker then wakes up and does your bidding, or fails to do your bidding in some tragicomic way as its text to speech or speech to text fails. But for it to hear you when you say, hey, Alexa, it has to be listening to everything you say. And one of the things that we've seen from security researchers is that Alexa's panoply of wake words, which includes dozens and dozens of words, are routinely interpreted by the Alexa devices when hundreds and hundreds of other words are spoken. And so, not to put too fine a point on this, but this is a device that you put next to your bed that if you make an unintelligible random sound, turns on and starts listening to everything you say. And that just feels to me like one of those things that right out of the gate, we should be able to spot as not something that we want in our homes. And the reason that Lenovo's Alexa implementation really struck for me, in addition to being in the bedroom, is a couple of things that happened in the last year. The first is that I finally abandoned Lenovo's laptops. I've been a ThinkPad user for a decade and a half, and I watched as Lenovo took the laptops that I knew and loved as both indestructible and easy to repair and turned them into devices that were effectively impossible to install Linux on and that I couldn't do a keyboard swap on myself. I switched to the Framework laptop, one of the few laptops that Kyle and his friends have given 10 out of 10 on a repairability scale, and I love it. I'm talking to you from it right now. That was one of the reasons, is this feels like yet another nail in the coffin of this once great and reputable manufacturer with a worldwide reputation for thinking first about its users. And then the other is what happened with Alexa and our friend at EFF, Dan Savage, about 2 weeks ago. Dan is the nationally known sex advice columnist and podcaster, and he tagged me in a tweet to say he was sitting in his living room one day with his husband, and all of a sudden, a couple somewhere else in the world having a lover spat started coming out of their Alexa, the voices of these people, randomly. He's not the first person to report this happening, and it's not the only people who get to hear the things that you say to your Alexa. Alexa, like all the other smart speakers, depends on back rooms of low-paid and often traumatized subcontractors all around the world who are given samples of your speech to check the interpretation that the speaker has made. And so, he tagged me to say, well, we've decided to keep our Alexa anyways. I wonder what that says about me. And what I said is, it makes you one of the normal people in the world who are suspicious of their ability to make individual choices that will improve the world, and who understand that the benefits are important and that the demerits probably need to be taken care of, not just by us making buy decisions, not just by voting with our wallets, but by voting with our ballots, by insisting on better policy that takes care of this. We shouldn't have smart speakers that spy on us and leak our audio and send our audio to strangers halfway around the world for quality assurance and all the rest of it, for the same reason that our car shouldn't explode. We shouldn't have to depend on asking the salesman the kind of shrewd questions that will let us determine whether our cars will explode in a low velocity collision. We should just not have those cars in the marketplace. And, we are long overdue in this country for a federal privacy law with a private right of action, the kind of thing that might discipline one of these companies. And, here we are. Here's the example of why we need firms to go beyond self-regulation and to be regulated by democratically accountable lawmakers that think about the public interest. So what's next on our run of show here? I confess I forgot to look beyond what happens there. Oh, it's time to discuss the momentum and progress of the right to repair movement, what to expect from 2022, and how viewers can get involved. We don't have a speaker assigned, but I think that's probably Gay. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or is it a group discussion?
It's a group effort. Everybody that's on the call has been very involved in all of this. But the quick recap is that this year has been an astonishing change for us as a movement. We've seen bills get passed. We've seen the FTC come out with a very strong report that supports everything we've been saying, pretty well eviscerates all of the comments in opposition that have been getting made by some of the very largest technology companies in the world. And we also had the approval of the Biden administration and the engagement from the administration in instructing federal agencies to do more to promote right to repair. So we've really been on a roll. We've also seen some of the, I call them the dominoes, the domino effect. You get one to tip and kind of starts to get the whole cascade going. We're seeing dominoes tipping. Evidence, that Microsoft has changed their tune. They're now going to be selling parts through iFixit. Apple says they're going to be nice. We'll find out, but it was a huge change for them to even say they'll be nice. So the dominoes are starting to fall, and I think we have a very positive outlook for legislative progress in this calendar year.
Is there anyone else on the call who wants to talk about some of our progress this year in right to repair? I'm sure, Kyle, you have a lot to say.
We're winning. Things are going very well. I mean, with the Federal Trade Commission coming out with their report, with the Biden administration's backing, you're seeing more and more momentum in states. The state legislative cycle where we're working on achieving right to repair success is at the individual state level. You had over 25 states last year introduce right to repair bills. This year, many states have already filed their bills. Illinois actually had the first hearing yesterday, and advocates, many of whom were on this call, stood up and fought for Illinois citizens' right to be able to fix their things. We're seeing increased momentum, and we're seeing a real shift in perception from not is right to repair going to happen, but when is it going to happen and what form is it going to take? So couldn't be more jazzed and excited. But of course, we're not going to be able to get this over the finish line without citizens getting engaged and talking to lawmakers. So that's the big ask for this coming year is please pick up the phone, call your lawmaker, and tell them that you want right to repair legislation to protect your right to tinker.
That's really well put, Kyle. I'll tell you, one of the things that I found very heartening this year was the news that Apple employees were putting the screws to their bosses about the lack of repairability in Apple devices and Apple's environmental footprint and its commitment to turning its devices into e-waste rather than having them break down and turn back into the parts stream as a way of maximizing profits and maximizing turnover of old devices. And, you know, at EFF, we've always relied on ethical technologists, not just to come work with us, but to support us financially. And then just as importantly, in their own work, in how they react to their employers' choices, the kinds of businesses they start, the kinds of code that they write. And, you know, technologists have a lot of leverage. We are still in very short supply. Firms actually do have to listen to us. As I always remind employees of big tech, if I go do a talk at one of the platforms, you know, the reason that you get to wear black t-shirts that say things your boss don't understand and have purple hair, and the people who clean the toilet have to wear humiliating uniforms and get paid 1/10 of what you do, is not because your boss is good-natured slobs and not because their work isn't important, but because you're really hard to replace. And, you know, by all means, take the free kombucha and the massages on Wednesdays. But if you're going to get all that privilege and all that money and all those stock options, by God, use them, because we are all depending on you to use that leverage that you have. And to see technologists rising to the occasion, not just there, but, you know, there are stories these days about Facebook having a terrible time hiring engineers because no one wants to work for them. This feels like something very heartening indeed. I wonder if Nathan or Cindy or Paul want to weigh in on what's going on with Right to Repair in the last year, or what's to come in the year to come, in the coming year, rather.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I also did want to point out that we had two questions that have kind of come in, I think, from the audience, one on NFTs and one on autonomous vehicles. I think, I recently wrote this column for Slate. It's kind of Right to Repair kind of stands out among several issues that we have, as critiques we have of big tech, and as an issue that people are actually seem to be like breaking through a little bit and making some momentum. And I think it's important for us to kind of, win the win, like finish the job and actually get these companies to commit to repairability, but just not forget also that, how did this happen? Well, it's like we had a really salient message that people could understand, and we built from the bottom up. We had all these states doing these things. We built some momentum. And I think that, when I look at technology, I see the potential to solve basically every problem that humanity has. But instead of solving those problems, like they're dreaming up ways to spy on us while we're sleeping or in our cars, or, to, like I was talking about NFTs, just ways to waste energy, to fake own things. I think that the public needs to invest in our public governance. We need to get serious about building up, taking our opportunity as citizens to make the world a better place. I really, really hope that everybody who hearing this, if you haven't already, lets your own state legislator know that you want to see this done. Because that is how we got 27 states to have bills, and that's how those states forced the conversation into corporate boardrooms and got shareholder groups involved and got the FTC involved. And it literally just started with people emailing their state representative and saying, "Hey, I want this." And you can definitely find out more at repair.org about how to get engaged.
Thank you.
And yes, sorry. And while I'm talking, I can answer this question that somebody had for me about, the question is, what can anyone do about losing their minds over Bored Apes and other NFTs? How can we make Samsung take a step back? I think, I don't know if we can make Samsung take a step back. If there's money to be made, they'll probably make it. I think we do need to care about, if we think that blockchain technologies and these other things should be here to stay, we need to set up some guidelines so that they don't, there are ways to get blockchains that don't use so much energy, and we should limit their expansion until they can hit those goals. Some people talk about proof of stake as a way to do these things, which is a more efficient technology. The other thing is that we should require, disclosure of how much energy is wasted at the point of sale, like what France is doing with repair scores on devices. Like, maybe you wouldn't buy that $63,000 lazy lion sketch or whatever people are doing if you knew that was also the same thing as burning 65 acres of forest in the Amazon. So anyway, that's just one point. I think those two things come to mind as in terms of things that the public should pursue.
That's excellent. And Paul, I don't know if you have any closing remarks, but we can also jump to the question that is here for you. How can we have autonomous vehicles or internet connected devices if we're always concerned about the potential for them being bricked and hacked?
Well, the reason, how you have those is through more transparency on the part of the device makers, right? And the problem with companies like Deere and others is they want to practice something called security through obscurity, which is if we just don't talk about security, if we just don't, let any of the details of the vulnerabilities in our products slip out there, then we're secure. And of course, that's not true because cyber criminals and hackers are always very motivated, and they don't care about playing by the rules. They don't care about non-disclosure agreements or anything else. They just want access. And the stakes of their access, as I said, are growing. So shutting down the food production in the United States by bricking thousands or tens of thousands of Deere, connected devices, tractors and harvesters in the field, that's a pretty big impact. So to kind of infer from your question, the answer is not, well, we should not make autonomous vehicles. The answer is we should hold a much higher bar for the manufacturers of those vehicles and devices to show to us that they are using due diligence to make those devices secure. I'll use Tesla as an example. Tesla at the CanSec West conference in 2019 sponsored a Hack Our Tesla contest where they offered huge monetary rewards and basically opened their hardware and software to the attendees of that conference to come in and try their hand at hacking. And in fact, people were able to do it. Tesla sponsored it. Tesla gave the hardware. Tesla rewarded the people who discovered vulnerabilities in their product. Now, those of us in the right to repair movement have issues with Tesla as a company in terms of its support for right to repair. But that's the type of approach that we should expect all manufacturers to take. Or heck, instead of just expecting them or asking them nicely to do the right thing, let's actually require them to do the right thing, right? Let's mandate by law that they open their platforms to security researchers to independently verify the security of those products, right? And that is what I would say. And that's how we can get both autonomous devices, remotely controllable devices, and also not have, robotic arms swinging in the field and killing people because somebody in Ukraine wants to have a fun time, okay? There we go.
Thank you, Rob. That's great. And I would add to that as a absolute benchmark principle that the person who is using the device should always be able to override the instructions that the device has itself. There's so much paternalism that says, well, what if you make a foolish decision with your autonomous car? Well, people do sometimes make foolish decisions, but the reality is that the person who is in the driver's seat as their autonomous car hurdles 80 miles an hour towards the median is better suited to decide how the software should operate than the design committee that met 1,000 miles away 5 years ago to craft the software's response to it. Gay, I see you have your hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much what you just said, is that I think that we also need to have some thought process about where we get to control our things and whether or not we even need them to be connected at all times to the internet. Why is a refrigerator attached to the internet? How many times do I have to know that I have to go to my cell phone to check to see if I need to exit the store? It's just, to me, some of these things are so trivial and they're so dangerous at the same time. Why can't a farmer of an autonomous vehicle set it all up, run it, and not have it attached to the internet? I just don't see the value of this constant attachment, this constant communications.
Especially when those devices are also harvesting data from those farms and then monetizing it without reimbursing the farmer whose data it is, right?
Right. Well, the farmer doesn't benefit from that, but the OEM does. And that's right. Part of the reason that the data is being harvested off your smart PEVs and your smart plumbing valves and your smart light bulbs.
Right. You are the product, right?
Yeah, you are the product. And I think we need to have the right to say, I'm not the product.
That's right.
And note that you're the
to operate without spying on me.
Can I add some
yeah,
other,
go ahead, Cindy.
some
Yeah.
other wants in here? And I'm happy to talk about some of the other questions as well. But as long as we're talking about what we need to do to make a more secure internet, I think that one of the things we need to do is get the criminal and civil penalties out of the way for the people who do us all the service of security research. I'm talking about the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I'm talking about the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. I'm talking about restrictive contracts with NDAs and other kinds of limits on what the people who want to know how their things work and fix them, and also the other people who want to help them now face if they come and try to figure out what's going on with the security or the other privacy issues of these devices. So I just want to stick those in there. There's some easy low-hanging fruit that we could do in terms of the legal context for people who are trying to do security research, privacy research, environmental research. All of the things that we're thinking about here have hurdles in front of them in the law that don't have to be there and aren't serving us. So we've had a case out of the Supreme Court this last year that gave us a little bit of relief on that, but there's more to be done. So as long as we're thinking that way, as long as I have the floor, also, what do things look like for right to repair? I mean, I think it's really one of the great success stories of this otherwise polarized time, that the right to repair your devices is not something that's gotten caught in the polarity of things right now. Everybody needs to be able to repair their stuff, and separating out the people who are selling us this stuff from the people who are using it, and letting the people who are using it have their voices is one of the great victories of this movement. And it's why I think it feels like we're making real progress. And I think that's an important insight going forward. Like, the steps to success are long. And even after you get the laws passed, you have to be vigilant to make sure they're actually being used and not just ignored. All the people on this call know this. But I think for all of you listening who care about this kind of stuff, these are long-term fights. They're fights we're winning, but we have to keep the pressure on if we want to win all the way. And all the way winning means not just passing the law; it means people actually getting to fix their stuff, and that will happen after we get the changes made. So it's fun to talk about worst in show, and it's fun to talk about, well, don't buy this. And I actually think for the NFT Samsung things, it may end up that this is a market failure, that people just don't want. There are not enough people who want to buy this kind of thing. That's one where I think there is a chance that the market will reject it. There's plenty of things that we've seen at CES and that we've talked about at CES, and many of them involve surveilling your own self, that just haven't worked as a product. And I think I've seen some recent news that even Alexa and those kinds of devices are not really doing the kinds of things that the marketing teams wanted, because people are uncomfortable with how it works one way or the other. So we can win these things. I think the important thing is that we think of ourselves as a group, not as individuals. Individual purchasing decisions are important, but they are really not what moves the needle. And so everybody on this call knows that. And I just want to make sure everybody listening, hears that. And we're here to recruit y'all, right? You're all part of you're all part of it. You're all part of our community that's standing up for users' rights. And so please make your voice heard. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So we have another question for me here. I'm going to summarize. It's basically, are NFTs the next DRM, the next digital rights management? And I don't know that they're the next digital rights management, but I think that you're right to worry that this shares some of the fundamental problems with DRM. I mean, DRM has lots of problems. It allows companies to decide what the rules are, not Congress. So they get to make up their own copyright laws that say what you can and can't do, and so on. But the most fundamental problem with DRM, to my mind, is that it only works if you can't control your computer. The DRM requires that your computer view you as its adversary. And there are all kinds of things that stem from that. Like if there's a program running that you don't like, your computer by design won't let you stop it. And so that is sometimes used by spyware makers and by stalkerware makers and by other people who want to do bad things to you. And they use the facility that was created to make sure you're not watching TV the wrong way, to ensure that they can spy on you with your webcam. And that's not something any of us should want. And NFTs, I think, share some of this DNA, that there is a problem with NFTs, the so-called right clicker problem, where the consensus hallucination that you have to buy into to treat NFTs as valuable has to include the idea that somehow that value isn't replicated when the JPEG that corresponds to the NFT ends up on your hard drive. And for that to work, your screenshotting capability, your right-click capability, your ability just foundationally to have your computer do what you tell it instead of what some remote party tells it to do, that goes out the window. And that's not a principle we can afford to go into in the coming years. As Gay has said, as other people on this call have said, you know, from tractors to webcams to speakers to heart monitors and everything in between, we want our computers to listen to us, not boss us around. When the reverse happens, well, we're back into cyberpunk was a warning, not a suggestion territory. Now, I wonder if anyone else has anything to add. We've got a little under 3 minutes left here, and we don't have any other questions from the audience unless someone from the audience wants to.
I have something small I'd like to note,
Sure.
and I think Nathan said this, but I just want to underline it. One of the problems that I think we're all facing right now is that personally, I am very excited about the prospect of decentralization. You know, I didn't get into the internet, you know, so that there were 5 big companies that controlled everything. And Cory, of course, has articulated this better than anything. The decentralization and smart uses of things like blockchain technology have a lot of promise. And I think it's incredibly distressing that the things that are showing up as some of the first uses of these things are so problematic environmentally. They're so problematic kind of just like commonsensically. And I want to just note that this and the grift and the other things that are going on. I think there is a tendency of right thinking people to just want to throw the whole thing out and just, you know, not go in the path of decentralization. And I think that we do that at our peril, because at least right now, like, you're in a world that Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and 4 or 5 other guys, sorry, almost all guys, are controlling so much of your online experience. And if we want to get out of that, the way to do that, one of the clear ways to do this is to move to a decentralized thing. So I guess my plea here is pay attention to the babies in the bathwater. That there are a lot of babies in this bathwater, and I love. I care very much about all the concerns that people are raising about these first uses of the technology. But if we toss out this, then we're stuck with those 5 guys, and I want us to get out of those 5 guys. And if decentralization can get us there, and I think there's lots of reasons why it can, we have to keep our eyes on that prize, even as we work to fix the problems with the early things that are being hyped and grifted on us. So.
Yeah.
I would also note, like, what's more decentralized than local repair shops fixing your stuff?
Totally.
So, we don't want centralized repair monopolies. It's not going to be good for society. It's not going to be good for civilization. So let's see if we can leverage 2022 as the year that the tide finally started to shift in the direction of more local repair shops, more local self-reliance, industry, and innovation happening at the edges of the network and not at the center.
Oh, totally. They
note,
all fit together, right? This vision of a better world.
There was a little bit of irony in the fact that John Deere's blog post announcing their autonomous tractors said, quote, "Farmers want autonomy," or "Farmers demand autonomy." And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. They do want autonomy. They want the autonomy to be able to repair their own equipment without having to, be subservient to your repair technicians, right? And so on. So I hope they take that to heart, because I think it's true. Although I think they meant it in a different sense.
I think that's great. As somebody who's ridden, I spent a lot of time in a combine as a kid. Like, I'm okay with that being something that you don't have to spend your days doing. But as Gay points out, like, there's lots of ways to do autonomy that aren't this. And I think that John Deere would like people to think that those are the only 2 choices, and we all know better.
Yeah, this reminds me of every time Unilever or Procter & Gamble buy your beloved local brand of, crackers or cereal or whatever, inevitably the press release says, well, we know that you value choice, so we've bought your favorite product.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to the end of this. Apropos the discussion about blockchain and whatnot, I'm going to paste a link into the chat. One of the oldest online services, every year has a state of the world discussion with John Lipkowski, who's a founder of Electronic Frontiers Austin, and Bruce Sterling, who wrote the Hacker Crackdown, the history of EFF. And this year, one of their guests is Vinay Gupta, who's a smart person about blockchain for good and not a windbag who blows a lot of smoke. And they're having a pretty spirited discussion about what and whether blockchain is good for and decentralization. Is there anyone who wants to get in a final word? We're about a minute over time here.
I just want to say thanks to the Right to Repair Coalition, to Kyle, to all of you, to US PERG, to everybody for really taking this issue and making it live and starting to win. Like this is so critical. And for me, as somebody who's been around for a little while now, watching something go from a good idea to actively getting, to empowering people, having people's voices heard, and really switching this. And the idea that we can repair, our digital devices as well as our analog ones was one that really you guys built. And we're happy to be part of it, and we're happy to be a part of it. But this is a success story. And I feel like in our days and our times, we need to celebrate these things whenever we can. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great comment. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. I think we're out. I'm not sure.
We're out.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
Bye,
I can't.
everybody.
Bye. See ya.
Well done, Cory. Thank you. Hey, I think you need to
Thanks,
log
Annie.
into that well thing.
I'm trying to find. There is a non-login link, and I can't find it.
Okay.
I just
Listen
found
to
it.
the YouTube chat once you find it.
I just found it. Here it is.